What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy. And I would like to welcome you to the first full official day of the offseason for the Dallas Cowboys. Today is Monday, January 5th, 2026. And the 2025 season for the Dallas Cowboys came to a close on Sunday. That means it is now off-season mode. We'll obviously be discussing what happens across the rest of the NFL playoff picture. We'll be talking mock drafts, draft stuff in general, off-season roster moves, re-signings, players the Cowboys should be going after. I think the first thing that we're going to be talking about, and a big subject we're going to be talking about right now, is off-season staff adjustments, amendments, retainments, who knows, whatever you want to talk about. But there's no off-season around here, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe already to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. You can do so right down below. You can also hang out with me across any other aspect or avenue of the internet. I'm all over the place. I'm on X, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, TikTok. All the links to all of my social profiles are down in the description below. As mentioned, it is Monday, and as of this point in time, this moment in time, and I'm always, hyper aware to tell you the time in case something changes because, you're busy, you got stuff going on. Maybe you're not watching this till later in the day. It is 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on Monday, January 5th, as I'm putting this video together. So please keep that context in mind. And as of this moment in time, the Dallas Cowboys have not done anything. They have not made any move, and there are people who are pretty pissed off about it. So this tweet seems pertinent to our discussion here. This is from the Athletics' Diana Rossini. She noted on Monday morning, while some coaches and front offices have met with their owners today, others, and she specifically said, like the Cowboys, will wait until tomorrow being Tuesday, to have those conversations with player exit meetings taking place today. Now, I want to be very fair to the process here. I think that we should be very fair to the process. I think that we should, give some consideration to the process. Sorry, I'm pulling something else that we can talk about here in a moment here, but I understand that everybody wants the Cowboys to do something now. You got to do it right now. I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I want to see a change. I'm speaking for what is probably a lot of people here. I want you to move on from the defensive coordinator. I want you to bring in a new defensive coordinator, whatever the case may be. And I get it. Look, I'm in no way, supporting the front office here. I do think it's fair to say, hey, this isn't all going to happen right away, or it's not all going to happen the day after the season ended, right? There's a protocol. There are, ways that these things happen. And so I would just say that just because the Cowboys haven't done something yet, and this isn't a promise or a report or anything, it's just, again, I think being fair to the process, just because they haven't done the arbitrary thing that you want them to do. And I do not say that dismissively. That does not mean that they're not going to be doing that at some point in the future or even the near future. It's just the way these things go. They have to have their exit meetings. They have to have their process. They have to have their protocol. And I know what you're going to say. Why do they have to have these? We know the decision. We've seen it. They should know by now. Maybe they do know by now. And again, I'm not trying to give anybody a benefit of the doubt here that hasn't earned it or that hasn't pissed it away. But that being said, this is an important week for the Cowboys. This is a critical week for the Dallas Cowboys. Let me remind everybody what happened this week a year ago. This week a year ago, there were teams who were moving on from their head coaches and trying to find a new skipper, trying to find a new gaffer, somebody to lead their team. And the Dallas Cowboys waited and twiddled their thumbs on Mike McCarthy, the Mike McCarthy who they ultimately moved on from. Now, the NFL has a rule that you can only interview playoff teams who hold the number one seed. So in this year's case, that's the Broncos and the Seahawks. In last year's case, it was the Lions and the Chiefs. You can only interview those coaches this week, the wild card week, because they're on their bye. Obviously, after that, they have a game to prep for. And last year, at this time, the Cowboys, who would eventually be looking for a new head coach, did not interview Aaron Glenn and did not interview Ben Johnson. And I understand, I'm not here to have the argument. If you are going to say, oh, I don't want Aaron Glenn, they were never going to hire Ben Johnson. Again, it's not about the name. It's not about the person. It's not about that specific individual. It's about the principle. It's about the fact that the Cowboys literally costed themselves a chance to interview somebody, anybody, any human being who could be their head coach. And they costed themselves that opportunity because they wanted to drag out the Mike McCarthy situation. And I say that as a word of caution for where we are right now. And I offer that as a word of caution because no good comes from dragging it out. If you're going to move on from your defensive coordinator, we are all understanding that you have to have the proper protocols and procedures and you got to do your exit meetings and things like that. Fine. But there's no sense in waiting 10 to 12 days, which was the report immediately after Sunday's loss to the Giants. There's no sense in doing it. You're only going to damage your ability to get a replacement candidate. You're only going to hinder and hurt yourself, your team, like you did when you did this song and dance with Mike McCarthy. So please do not drag it out. And beyond all of that, it's also not kind. It wasn't kind to drag it out with Mike McCarthy. It wasn't kind to drag it out with Jason Garrett. It won't be kind to drag it out with your defensive coordinator if you're just going to ultimately move on from him. Just do it as soon as you possibly can after we understand your protocols, your procedures, your meetings, your exit stuff, whatever. And that is what is best for everyone, yourself included. Nobody endorses waiting on things like this. Nobody endorses dragging them out. So please do not do this. And look, we're at a place with the Dallas Cowboys where they have done things in such an illogical manner that we are forced to consider some illogical reasons for doing them, right? Like we're so far down the rabbit hole that what is common sense or normal or logical to people up on the surface, that those aren't the rules down here. And so people say things like, well, why did the Cowboys drag things out? Why would they drag out, the Mike McCarthy decision a year ago? Why would they hypothetically drag out the defensive coordinator situation in this moment in time? And these are preposterous theories, conspiracy theories. I would even go as far as suggesting, but we're so far down the rabbit hole that I think you have to consider them and consider that they have legitimate lines of merit. And the two conspiracy theories would be, one, they do not want to be turned down. They do not want to approach the hottest candidates, the people who they should be going after in these early windows that we're talking about here. They do not want to be turned down, and they believe they would be turned down. We could offer someone like Ben Johnson as an example a year ago. Maybe the reason the Cowboys, again, in a conspiracy theory sort of way, dragged out the Mike McCarthy thing was so that they would not have the opportunity for Ben Johnson to decline an interview with them. The other is tangential, but also somewhat related to that. And it's so that they don't have to do the work, right? It's so that if the Cowboys delay, let's just be hypothetical in this, this moment in time, their defensive coordinator search, there would be hypothetical defensive coordinator search. Well, if all the good candidates are poached and hired by their people before they even begin the process, they can say, well, all those dudes were hired. What can we do? We hired someone who was available at the time, So it is silly to throw out these sorts of theories. But again, they have behaved in a manner that is so illogical in the past that we are forced to consider these things, which is a really sad thing, in its ultimate sort of truth. And that's, I think, where people kind of feel stuck right now. It feels like we're just stuck in place and the Cowboys are treading water and just sort of encircling nothing and just, keeping us here with them. But that's kind of the only place we sort of have to hang out at this moment in time. It's a really frustrating sort of thing. Understanding, again, that there are procedures and protocols that have to be followed, obviously, for the season to end in its formal manner. That's kind of everything as it stands, because there has been no development with the Cowboys, obviously, but there have been a few developments since we last spoke. One of those is that the 2026 opponents were finalized for the Cowboys. These are almost fully known well in advance. Unless the NFL adds an 18th game, we know 14 of the 17 teams who the Cowboys will play in 2027 as an example. But with the 2025 regular season fully and finally and formally coming to an end on Sunday night with the Baltimore Ravens losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, we now know all 17 games that the Cowboys will play in terms of the opponents and where these games will take place. You obviously know that they'll play their division rivals, once at home, once on the road. The Cowboys are playing the NFC West and the AFC South in 2026, and per the rotation relative to how it's gone, they will host the Cardinals, the Niners, the Jaguars, and the Titans, and they will visit the Seahawks, the Rams, the Texans, and the Colts. The other games that are coming, and the reason you see several others, is while the Cowboys are playing the entire NFC West, they will play the same place finisher as them. They finished in second in the NFC East. In the other NFC divisions, that is the NFC South and the NFC North. The home game for them is the South game, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who finished second in that division. And the road game is the Green Bay Packers, who finished second in the NFC North. Finally, ever since the NFL added the 17th regular season game in 2021, that has come from a same place finish, which in the Cowboys case was second place, relative to a division from the opposing conference. So the Cowboys are a part of the NFC East. The entire NFC East will play the same finisher as their NFC North counterpart in 2026. Those games will be all home for the NFC side, not just the NFC East, the entire conference as a whole. And because the Baltimore Ravens finished in second place in the NFC North, the Cowboys will host them. We didn't know, obviously, going into that game who was going to win, who was going to lose, but this is it. These are the 2026 Dallas Cowboys opponents. So have at it. We don't know the dates yet. We won't for a few months now, but that's who it's going to be. And the other thing that was finalized, and I can pull this up right here, a couple of clicks, and I thought I had it right here. I guess I don't. Actually, I do right here. One second. I should have been prepared. That's my bad. But what was finalized after this was ultimately finalized after the night game when the season ended in its entirety. But something that was finalized after the afternoon game when the Miami Dolphins lost. The Dallas Cowboys will hold the 12th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Amazingly, poetically, depressingly, it is the exact same spot where the Cowboys picked last year when they took Tyler Booker out of Alabama. The Cowboys also held the 12th overall pick in 2021 when they drafted Micah Parsons, although it is a little bit different. Last year in 2025, the Cowboys held the 12th overall pick because they earned it. In 2021, the Cowboys actually originally had the 10th overall pick in that draft, and we all thought they were going to take one of Pat Surtain or J.C. Horn, and then the Broncos and Panthers took them, and the Cowboys didn't know what to do, so they traded out of that 10th overall pick. Again, this was the 2021 NFL Draft with, of all teams, the Philadelphia Eagles, who jumped up, obviously, to take Devontae Smith, and Dallas jumped back 2 spots. New York was sitting there at 11 at the time, you may recall. They traded back with Chicago, who took Justin Fields at that spot, and then Dallas at 12 took Micah Parsons, and a whole lot of things have happened ever since. But so the 12th overall pick ultimately has been pretty good to the Cowboys in recent history, and obviously we're hoping that that's the case once again in 2026. We will see. Obviously, what happens with the Cowboys over the course of the week. I'll be here. Lots of stuff happening on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, bloggingtheboys.com, all over social. It should be a busy week for them in a logical sense, but they may drag this out. They may do nothing. Again, we have no idea. They like to do things their way, and they own the team. And so, unfortunately, we're all kind of stuck along for this ride. If you want to hang out with me on my ride, that's a weird segue, across any level of social media, you can do so. Like I said, the links to all of my social profiles are down in the description below. My name is RJ Ochoa. This is the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you're enjoying some life without the Cowboys, because we definitely need some for a little bit here. Like I said, for all this to kind of chill, and then we'll try to figure things out and take a couple of steps forward, hopefully sometime later this week. But thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out. Looking forward to a new episode of the NFC East mixtape dropping on Tuesday. That'll be live, and hanging out with BLG, and we're going to have a special guest. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out, and we will see you next time.